And out front now, Republican Congressman Peter King. He serves on the House Homeland Security and Intelligence Committees, and Democratic Congressman Brian Higgins. He serves on the House Foreign Affairs and Homeland Security Committees. All right, great to have both of you with us. Congressman Higgins, let me start with you. The Prime Minister's welcome in Congress was something to see. I was sitting there watching it. It sort of took my breath away because it was so much pomp and circumstance. It rivaled the State of the Union. The standing ovations, the cheers, and unlike at the State of the Union, you didn't see half the room refusing to stand or shaking their heads because more than 50 Democrats didn't attend. So you had an overwhelmingly friendly audience. You chose to go, even though you support a deal. Did your colleagues make a mistake and give a PR victory to the Israeli Prime Minister?
I don't think so. I think that Democrats and Republicans are united in our support for Israel. And I think this speech, while the I think proper protocol was breached, that said, added to the dialogue. And I think it was very, very important. I think Congress overwhelmingly, both Democrats and Republicans, responded very favorably to the Prime Minister's speech.
They did respond favorably. And interesting you say Democrats and Republicans. So the Democrats that were there seeing it favorably. Congressman King, the President, maybe that's part of the reason he chose this afternoon when he was appearing with his Defense Secretary to speak for 15 minutes about the speech from the White House. And here's part of what he said.
If we're successful in negotiating, then in fact this will be the best deal possible to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. Nothing else comes close. Sanctions won't do it. Even military action would not be as successful.
That's the key line. I mean, isn't a deal, Congressman King, better than military action, even if, frankly, it's not a very good deal?
No, I think a bad deal is bad because it would, in effect, be institutionalizing Iran's nuclear capacity, because they would maintain their nuclear infrastructure, they would have enriched uranium, and the deal would sunset, if it's the way it appears to be, in 10 years, and that would mean that in less than a year, Iran would be a nuclear power. Once at the end of that 10-year period, within 1 year after that, they would be a nuclear power with everything in place. So no, I think that more has to be done. And listen, everybody would like an agreement. I agree with Brian on that. But an agreement which, in fact, locks in place Iran's nuclear infrastructure, I think is dangerous to Israel, dangerous to the U.S., dangerous to the world.
Congressman Higgins, I know you support this deal right now. You just heard a reporter...
There's no deal to support. It's framework for a deal will be established in about a month from now.
So do you support what the President has put forward, or this breakout time of 1 year that Congressman King's referring to, or no?
Well, I think the President's been very clear that we have to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. There are a lot of questions and concerns. The number of centrifuges in the last 10 years have increased in Iran from 168 to about 19,000. Those are the machines that spin at supersonic speeds to enrich uranium to bomb grade. That's a major, major concern. So I'm very curious to see what the agreement, the final agreement, of the framework of the agreement says about the number of centrifuges that will be allowed, because you can't deal with Iran's nuclear program without dealing with its atomic infrastructure.
And the centrifuges is a crucial part of it, which I wanted to get to in a moment. But let me ask you something then, Congressman, because it sounds like you're not totally on board with at least the framework of the deal that's out there now. You want to know more. I want to read to you another tweet from the Supreme Leader of Iran. You heard our reporter in Tehran share a tweet. That kind of vitriol is very standard from this Twitter account. Back in November, the Ayatollah tweeted this: "Why should and how can Israel be eliminated?" Ayatollah Khamenei's answer to 9 key questions. My question to you is, how can you support any kind of a deal with a country whose supreme leader is tweeting that kind of thing?
I think because of what you said earlier, and that is that sanctions brought us to the table. Sanctions are an Israeli idea. Sanctions have crippled the Iranian economy, and without sanctions they wouldn't be at the table. The question is what comes from that negotiation. It is very, very fair, and everybody points this out, to be very, very skeptical about Iran's commitment to some peaceful settlement relative to the nuclear program. They are causing a lot of problems in the region, in Iraq with the control of the Shia militias, in Syria with the support of Assad, and in Lebanon with the support of Hezbollah.
So, Congressman King, this issue of the centrifuges, obviously they do have about 20,000 now. Obviously not all of them are operational. Prime Minister Netanyahu says the supreme leader of Iran wants 190,000 centrifuges. We checked that. That's true. He has said that. Prime Minister Netanyahu cites that as evidence of their intent, so we called a weapons inspector. And that weapons inspector, David Albright, actually said, look, that number could be completely consistent with a peaceful nuclear program. Japan actually has more centrifuges. Is this focus on the number of centrifuges off base?
I think it's something that has to be part of the discussion. And if it were just centrifuges per se, and if it was in the hands of another country, you mentioned Japan, then I would not have the concern. But in the hands of Iran, with the rest of their nuclear infrastructure, I am very concerned. And I just wish the president, and also the Democratic leader, Nancy Pelosi, had shown more respect to Prime Minister Netanyahu. I mean, listen, what Bibi Netanyahu has done today has probably set off the first real debate we've had, public debate in this country, on the proposed or potential nuclear agreement with Iran. And he is our closest ally in the Middle East. I think he deserved better treatment. Again, as Brian said, we do want a good agreement. I don't know if we're going to get it. I'm very doubtful right now. But Israel is our closest ally. And I think it's important for us to keep that in mind. When you look at that terrible part of the world, Israel is the one, it's the beacon, it's the democracy, it's strong, they stood with us, and I just think that we should be listening to what the Israeli Prime Minister says and take it seriously. Don't mean we have to accept it. Now, everything he said today, I think I agree with based on what we know, but having said that, at the very least, it should be given very serious consideration.
All right, well, thanks very much to both of you, and it's a fair point, it's serious consideration. It could possibly be the most important diplomatic negotiation by the United States in 30